Hi, everybody. Welcome to Creative Academy office hours for Wednesday, April 25th. And this one happening at noon. We have switched to new office hours times for Wednesday. We're going to have office hours at 12 o'clock and at 5 o'clock to hopefully make it a little bit easier for people to come who are on lunch break at work, and also for those East Coast folks in the evening time. It'll be 8 o'clock East Coast time instead of 10 o'clock, which will be better. And as well for people, hopefully we can sneak it in before the dinner hour when you're still maybe in work mode. So yeah, we're going to try that out for the next couple months and see how people feel about that. And then we'll reevaluate going forward. So if anybody has particular comments about office hour times, please drop those into the comments area, or just send me an email or something to let me know, and then we'll keep that in mind when we do our next revamp. How do you guys feel about that shift? Is that
I like the old times better, but it's fine. I'm flexible.
Okay. Yeah. So anyway, we'll see how it goes. We had a lot of people who were struggling with it happening in the middle of dinner time. So we'll shift it up for a little while and yeah, see how we do. Okay. So Jeremy, Bonnie, questions, throw them in.
I have one, but I can wait. It should be a short one, I think.
Go for it.
So my Bookfunnel Promotion, I Googled, I couldn't find any, like, what do you call them? Like official, Leprechaun Day. I couldn't find any of those.
Yeah, okay.
But I ended up finding there's something called Witches' Night that takes place in Germany. It's supposed to be a night where witches go to the peak of this certain mountain, and people come together and they burn bonfire to ward off the witches. So that happened to coincide, I think, on March or April 30th. And I'm like, well, that should do. That's close enough. I got kind of a witch in my book. And so I made mine. It's the Witches Night Adventure Giveaway. And I had it for, like, I think 16 entries, 1,000 people at least on your mailing list each. And I think it's all, except they're done before, I'm always like, maybe overthinking it, but like, I think everything's set up, everything seems to be good. I only have one picture to be shared around. Mm-hmm. And I found today 3 more, but I didn't know if there's more to it than that. I didn't know if they all need to be a certain aspect ratio. I didn't know. I wonder if you could share with me your experience as far as like the pictures to be shared around.
Yeah, so there's 3 main shapes that all social media pictures are going to take, right? So there's the square images that can be shared in all kinds of places. That would be Instagram. You can also share square ones on, I think, Twitter and Facebook now. Like, most of them are adapting to be more flexible for images. But usually when I make a pack of images for anything for social media, I'll do a square one, I'll do a vertical rectangle, and then I'll do a rectangle this way. And there is a really neat tool. Oh, it has slipped my brain. I'm going to look it up right now because I have it in the cool stuff folder here. But it will actually auto resize your images. You upload an image to one space and it auto resizes it for all the different shapes and sizes. So it'll crop it. You got to be a little bit careful how you build the image or what you put in, but it is a really neat thing to just make them all be the ideal optimized sizes. But if you are building something for people, then you can do it just rectangle this way, and square, and kind of go from there. And it's just, as long as you have the resolutions built so that the biggest size is what you're starting with. Like, you want it to be bigger than it needs to be, not smaller, so that it doesn't go fuzzy when it's viewed full screen or on a larger screen or whatever. Yeah. Does that make sense? Like, just if 1200 by 1200 is the square, like, don't make it 300 by 300 for your square image, because it's going to show up as 900 by 900 on some of them. Because it'll stretch then and it'll be fuzzy. So you want to be bigger than you think you need. And then just do like a save for web or optimize for web in your save settings, because you don't want it to be like 3 megabytes, right? So you want that blend of higher quality, but lower storage space that it takes up, so that it'll load fast on people's devices. And yeah.
Okay. I'm just writing this down quickly, quietly.
Yeah, no worries. And I'm just gonna look up the reference of awesome thing that I have here. Social media. It's a really neat tool just to play around on. If I can't find it quickly here, I'll dig it up for you guys after. Social media. Image sizes for all platforms. Okay. So Sprout Social. Okay, I'm going to share these links with you guys, or I'm going to try in the chat here. There's 2 links in here. One is a Google Doc that has their latest things, and one is an article that if you click on it, they have their social media size guide, and they always keep this updated to the current thing. So, and then they have a bunch of stuff with free like tools to help you resize things, but it breaks it all down for you in very specific detail, exactly what
for
is.
Social, it'll let me upload the pictures and kind of mess them there. And
yeah, that's one of their social media resizing tools, and they're usually linked to it from in the article. They usually link from that article, so see what works from in there. Yeah, I'm not seeing the link, but one of the 2 on the side should link you to it, and it will give you, there's breakdown by section, by platform, of exactly what the optimized stuff for your like your banner, your header, your profile pics, for anything you're sharing on it, for videos, like for everything. It's all there.
Okay.
And really nicely broken out. So that's an excellent place to be. Yeah. And you also had a question, Jeremy, that you had sent about the updated European guidelines for privacy and stuff. Yeah. So I've read through a lot of different things, and pretty much what it boils down to are 2 main issues they're trying to address. One is that you need to make sure people are opting in, like legitimately opting in. So when we have a form that says, okay, you need to check here and then put in your email address and you can download this free book. And then it tells you, like, the Bookfunnel defaults to saying, by clicking this, you're signing up to receive information from this author. So Bookfunnel has actually already adhered to those guidelines. And so we don't have to change anything about that. One of the things is that some companies will click that you're opted in by default, but now they're saying you have to check the box, like you actually have to actively agree, not just not notice that you need to opt out. So that's one of the main changes they're making. But if you've got your sign-up forms through Bookfunnel, then that's not a problem. So just make sure that if you've got any other sign-up forms, like on your website, then you might have made those manually through MailerLite or wherever. Now, MailerLite is also working to make sure that all their templates and forms comply with those best practices. So both of those companies have kind of already got your back in terms of setting you up for that not to be an issue. So just review your forms and make sure that it's very clear that yes, they're getting a free book, but they're also agreeing to accept occasional updates from you. And that if you're saying check this box to indicate you agree, then just make sure that it's a manual thing that they check. And that's probably already done by the 2 companies that you might be using to put that.
Those are the 2 only areas I can think of anyways.
Yeah, exactly. So that's your big thing. The other big piece is don't ask for more information than you need, which I don't think is an issue in our particular niche, because what we're only asking for an email address and a first name for the most part, right? Yeah. So the less information you have, the less worried you need to be. It's when you're requesting people's mailing addresses and you're, processing payment information and everything through your site, then that becomes a lot more of a security issue. So the other thing that they do want to make sure of is that if someone unsubscribes, that they are immediately removed, which is fine. We always have to have an unsubscribe button on our newsletters anyway, so that's not a new thing. And this is one thing that you do have to manually do, that if someone requests to be completely removed from your system, then you need to do that. So what I mean by that is when somebody unsubscribes, they are not completely deleted from your MailerLite account or your newsletter account, right? They're in there as an unsubscribe still. And so what this is sort of looking at is that you need to actually delete your unsubscribes, not just leave their info sitting in there, because then they still could be compromised if somebody sort of hacked into your stuff or went, looking for contact information. If they're not completely gone from there, then their information is still at risk. And they're also at risk of you popping up again and sending something in the future again to them, even though they've unsubscribed. They don't have to re-up in the same way. So, it's good practice for you anyway to go into your account once a month or every couple of weeks or whatever, and just hit delete on all the people who have unsubscribed, because you're paying by person, so you don't want dead weight in there. And your total number of users includes those people because they're in your database. So you want to purge those at least once a month. Personally, I just go in and do it every time I'm sending a newsletter or sending an email out to people. So, that kind of keeps it in a rotation of just a housekeeping task, and it keeps your numbers so that you're only paying for people that are legitimately engaged and part of your following. But as long as you're doing those things, then you're covered. And so the only reason why some people are having to resend out things is because if you don't know where your people originally came from, like maybe you've had your mailing list for 10 years and at that time nobody had to opt in, or you bought a list from somewhere, because some people do that kind of thing. That's different, right? And so, but I think for any of us, our lists are recent enough, and the tools we were using, we can already show this person opted in through this Bookfunnel giveaway. They checked that box on the form to say they wanted to get it. So for us, I don't think we have anything extra we have to do other than just be following those best practices and make sure you're going in and hitting delete on your unsubscribes on a regular basis.
Okay. I appreciate you all that research, by the way. I know it's easy. I did a little bit of it, and I was getting overwhelmed. So
yeah, there's a lot of extra legal crap, but I've also been watching as everybody else is sending newsletters, and all the big companies are updating their terms of service and all that kind of stuff as well. And so, it was interesting to kind of dig into. But yeah, the bottom line is basically we were already, all of us anyway, hopefully everybody watching as well, was already using best practices. And, we're very much letting people choose to be engaged or not be engaged. And
as an update, after taking your advice on my newsletters and on my website, I don't know, I don't have numbers in front of me to really prove it, but I've had a much more positive response to everything. I've been getting emails from people saying I like the newsletter and like the website, and my reviews, I feel like, have been coming in faster and better. I'm up to on my first book, 26 reviews today. I got a new one today. 26 reviews today.
That's so great. Weren't you at 3 or something at the beginning?
No, it was more than that, but it wasn't great. I was at 4 stars, which bugged me, and now I'm back up to 4.5 or whatever, which is great.
Nice.
And so, yeah, all that advice you gave me is definitely paying off. And so, now if I get 24 more, I can maybe get a Bookbub, so.
Yeah. Well,
we're halfway there.
And the number of reviews, I have to say, I've seen books that did not have that many reviews. It's more about, are you widely available? Are the reviews that are there positive? And, are you adhering to all the other requests that they have? So, Yeah, that's don't feel like you can't apply
Okay,
until you're
I've done
there.
it twice now.
Yeah. Well, and I forget who it was. I was listening to an interview with somebody who's like bestseller, like USA Today kind of best-selling romance author, who was saying, oh yeah, I get like 1 in every 12 times I apply, I think I get a Bookbub. Like, it's not, it really is kind of like a lottery, and you've got to buy the tickets to win. So that's the only way to play. So on that one, as long as you're being strategic about when you apply, because there's like a 30-day, like
Yes.
once a month or whatever it is that you can only apply. So you just have to make sure that you're staggering your books, or your, whatever you've got in a rotation. But she was like, oh yeah, I'm applying like every week. I'm applying for one of these slots for one of the different books or promos or something. So you just want to be like, yeah, strategically spreading that out so that there's always something in the mix. And yeah, and then you're upping your chances of getting picked. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, I'm really glad to hear all that hard work is paying off, because, you're going off and doing the stuff as opposed to just learning about it, which is also a key ingredient in that. Actually doing the hard work and making all the changes. So congratulations. That's super exciting.
Oh, thank you.
Yay. All right. And Chris, you had a bunch of questions.
Always, yes.
Always, yes, which is great. Okay, so one of the questions was around website stuff, right? But I feel like if we keep going on the newsletter stuff, you had a couple newsletter-related questions too. So if we do those first, then we can bounce into the other one. I'm just pulling them up unless you have them in front of you and want to remind me. But
let me...
Okay.
Well, Chris looks at one quick question.
Sure.
Have you updated the branding? You had like the one video on branding. Is there any more ones? It's okay if you haven't. I just want to double check.
Okay, that's this weekend's project, actually, because yes, they're haunting me. They are all done. I've even recorded the audio. So this weekend is mashup weekend, where I put them all together, and
no pressure.
Yeah, they should be coming out next week. Pressure for me. They've been like partially ready for months. Anyway, yes, you will be getting many of those in the next week or so, which is great.
Just want to make sure I didn't miss it.
Yeah, you're good. You didn't miss it. Okay.
Actually, Crystal, it wasn't newsletter stuff. It was ad stuff I was asking about.
Right. Okay. Okay. So there are ads in general was a good place to start, maybe. So looking at paid ads and where and how to do them in a way to get a good return for investment, and that's one of those very large topics that tends to react differently for different people. But some of the things that are at least cheaper to experiment with are the AMS ads. It's actually quite hard to get your spend in for AMS ads. Like you only pay when people click. So it actually, like, it's an interesting exercise to do those. So there is a little mini course I'm slowly working through on those. I haven't experimented a lot with it yet, but there are a few things that I can tell you that will maybe help with that anyway.
Is that the Dave Chesson course?
Yes, there is a Dave Chesson course on that. And then
that's what I'm doing as well.
Yeah. And I also, I have Mark Dawson's self-publishing stuff that I've signed up for. And I haven't signed up for the ads for authors yet, but I'm going to do it when it reopens in the summer. I think they're supposed to be opening in July or something. So I'm going to do the next level of that one at that point. But yeah, so I've listened to a ton of podcasts and specific like webinars and stuff on AMS ads and people who are using them and kind of how they're using them. So really starting small and experimenting is important. Finding those authors that are similar. It's a matching game. The same strategies that we talked about for populating your also bots is basically what you want to keep in mind. Like you want to go and find the best possible seller in your little niche. So let's say you know, for me, Susan Mallory is the closest to what I'm doing, and she's like the biggest seller in her category, then, you know, you can select those authors, the ones that you want to be matched with, from your options. So you want to make sure that you're, being as proactive on the research side as you can about who you want to be paired with, because it's pairing not just from an actual content perspective, but from a branding perspective as well. Then just being associated with those authors is a positive thing in people's minds. Right. There are different kinds of AMS ads as well. So there's the ones that show up like block images, you know, when you're looking at a listing and it shows up like a picture banner, either right under it or on the side. But there's also placement ads. So they have the ones where you do an Amazon search and some pop up and they have a little bit of extra info in the search. I don't know if you've noticed those.
Right, I haven't yet, no. But
they say advertise or sponsor or something as well.
Yeah, so you know what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to share the screen with you, and we're just going to pull up a search thing so I can show you.
Crystal, just one thing on what you just said. It's not like you can just say, right, I want to be on Susan Mallory's page, and automatically you're the first person people look at. I mean, no,
you're kind of bidding on it. Yeah. So again, you got to go kind of wide in what you're asking for, and then hope that you get those things picked up.
And when you say bidding, does that mean, I mean, I assume I haven't yet done it, but I assume this is about going in and saying, I'm willing to spend this much if I get my ad on this page. Is that right?
It's more about what you're willing to pay per click.
Ah.
Yeah. And then they'll take like the highest bidder per click in the section that's been requested or whatever. So again, I haven't played with this too much, so I'm not super up on it, but Facebook ads work very similarly. Right. And those I've played with a bit more. So it is about putting in the amount you're willing to pay per click, the total ad spend you're willing to have per day or week or month or however you put that in. And then kind of adjusting based on what you're finding for traffic. So let's do a search for what? Give me a keyword or key phrase or something. What are we going to look for? Bonnie, give me something about dragons. What do we got here?
Something about dragons. Oh, I don't know.
Like young adult dragon book or something?
Sure.
Oh, look, young adult dragon books. That's a thing. Okay. So you can see in here, this one has an additional description, okay, and it's first, but it's a sponsored ad.
Crystal, is that an ad?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I see. So that's what pops up after a search. That's one of the two options you were talking about.
Yeah, exactly. It says sponsored up here.
Right.
Yeah. And so what you'll find, and when you click on like a category, let's see teen and young adult coming of age. So let's see, we've got mostly just regular ones, but sometimes some of the ones in the listings will have a description that shows up here. So they're not always at the top, like this one. Yeah, is showing up here, right? More sponsored, sponsored, sponsored. So this is a whole section of them at the bottom. But you can see how they show more information. They're pulling, you totally can't see what I'm pointing at. They're pulling the sales text from the top there. Okay. So that's just something to be aware of. Like people have asked me before, how do I get it to show more? You know, why isn't it pulling my description? That's why these people are paying to have that done. But my understanding is that these are not that expensive, that you can actually do quite well with that, but that you will do better if your sponsored stuff is also available in Kindle Unlimited. So it's one of those things with the search algorithms, you know, that come up. You want it with the click-throughs, not just the views, because that impacts your placements overall. So anyway, it's kind of up to you how you tweak those pieces and wiggle those pieces. And unfortunately, I can't give you the magic formula yet on how that will work. But yeah, just poke around in your category and see how that's working. And let's just see what shows up for an ad on this one, if anything. So we're getting a sidebar ad here. Okay. So this is one of the placements. And then this is another one.
And the bottom there too, right? Sponsored products?
Yep.
Yeah, it's right down the bottom.
Here, there's so many ad spaces.
Yeah.
And this is additional. Those are the ones that are coming up that in a search category that people have paid for. You might see them on the main page, but you might also see them here. Yeah. And then there's more. Like they just keep going and going and going, right? So yeah, you can see that there's a lot of different spaces within that program. And when you sign up, you can say which ones you're wanting to be included in, because then you have to upload content that fits in those spaces. So AMS Ads is one place. Kobo also has a direct advertising program where they'll include it in like mail outs to their readers and stuff as well. But I believe you can only qualify for those if you're publishing directly with Kobo. So that's something to think about when you're deciding how to set up your platforms. And one of the things I'm going to experiment with when I do my next book is using, because KDP I'm uploading to separately. And then Draft to Digital currently I have for everything else because I just like to manage it from one place. But I do want to play with the Kobo ads. So for the next book, I'm going to try uploading directly to Kobo and directly to Amazon and just turning off those two channels in Draft to Digital. And then that will open up the direct marketing options inside Kobo because they do have some neat stuff, which I think, Chris, you are aware of because you were talking to Mark or whatever. So
yeah, Mark was, yeah.
So yeah, that's also a very affordable kind of way to experiment with that. The biggest thing I think is making sure that what you're advertising gets you some traction. Like you might, if you're thinking Facebook ads, a lot of people find it effective to be advertising their free book that's the start of a series, because then it's actually pulling people in. It's low commitment for them. You're not saying come buy this thing, you're saying come get this for free, and then they're actually then buying through, and you can kind of judge how many people are buying through to see if it's worth that. Mark Dawson talks a fair bit about that on different podcasts, and he's done a couple webinars and stuff, but it is looking at purchasing a reader, not selling a reader a book, right? When you're trying to weigh the value of your ads, you can't just look at it as I'm going to promote this one book. You have to make sure you're feeding them into a machine that kind of takes over to keep the momentum going at that point. So like if you've got only one book in a series that's out, that may not be the time to be paying for those ads. It may be not until your second or third book in the series is out. Right? And then
ads or AMS ads as well.
All of them, right? Like so if you just want to experiment at a low threshold and see where things are going, then that's great. But you need to get your other pieces in place before you're looking at ads. Like ads from nothing are not effective. If you've got an ad though that says 300 people have given this book 5 stars, the chances that people are going to actually click on that ad and buy your book are much higher. So you want to make sure you're not just throwing money at the problem, because you can't just sell books with ads. You can sell more books with ads once you've established that people like it and you've got a bit of a street cred inside the bookstores and you've built up some reviews and all those things. But like you're not advertising to get reviews, for example. Like that's not the kind of output you're going to see from that most likely. So you want to be really clear, like what are you advertising for? So a great way to use Facebook ads is to get people on your mailing list, right? Because then they are future readers, but you do that by giving them a free starter library, right? So yeah, you need to make sure that what you're offering is enough of an enticement that enough people are going to click through and commit to whatever it is that you're offering. So like, to use Mark as an example again, he'll do like, get your free Milton starter library, and there's 3 or 4 or 5 like novels that you get when you sign up for his mailing list, and then you're on there, right? And then he's got a reader cycle. So yeah, I think that's just something to be really aware of, is why are you spending that money? What is your target outcome? How is it going to benefit you? And then you start really small, like maybe only, you know, $5 a week while you test out, is it working at all? You know, are people even clicking through? Are you getting any more sales than you were before?
I did miss all that. Damn. Okay.
I found I did do some Facebook advertising, some AMS advertising, and I didn't really find that through Facebook, and it probably was my ads. I didn't find that I got a lot of subscribers. And then I found through AMS, I was able to get at times a lot of clicks, but I didn't know if people downloaded my book. I clicked on it, and I kind of wrote them asking like, "Hey, is there a way I can find out if people are actually clicking, if these, you know, these ads are getting people to download my book?" And they kind of said, "No, we don't know how to do that." And I'm like, "That's not true," but whatever. And then I kind of like compared my sales of my second book. I didn't really see that it was helping. So in the meantime, I decided to take your advice and focus on building the mailing list and on writing the third book. And then I think I'll go back to advertising the third book's out.
Yeah.
More likely collect people, but I started doing the Michael Chesson, you know, ads, which is super complicated, and I'm pretty sure you need to buy his $100 program to do it properly, unless you want to spend hours and hours and hours on it, which I do have, but I don't know if I was a smart purchase at this time. So yeah, that was my experience with ads so far. I think, like you say, it was too early for me. I need to have more books and more reviews before that's really going to work for me.
Yeah, I think ads are a great scaling up tool. They are not a good establishing yourself tool, right? And so that's just something to keep in mind, like to build them into your strategy, but as something where you're even already getting some royalties in, and you're choosing, okay, well, out of every $100 I make, I'm going to funnel 5 back into advertising, or, you know, whatever that is. And then it's a gamble, and it's a guess and test, and it needs a lot of analysis. And so, you know, when you look at the people who have nailed this and are saying, oh, well, I'm making, you know, 5 figures a month, and they're also spending 5 figures a month on advertising. So they might be making 10,000, but they're spending 5. So, you know, that is a scalable philosophy, but not when you're starting with 0. So, you know, it's really easy to move backwards, and it's really easy to find yourself overinvested when you've already paid for your covers and your editing and your all that kind of stuff, especially if you don't have the groundwork laid to make that stuff pay off yet. So, you know,
those guys don't tell you that. None of them tell you.
No.
They're just like, yeah, start spending, go for it.
Yeah. And, you know, yeah, it's a tricky field to play in, and it's the big ones selling you the success stories that have all that. And so I'm not saying it doesn't work, because I totally believe that you need ads to scale. Like any large company does not scale up without any kind of advertising at all, right? So I actually set for myself a challenge, because I have done a bunch of paid ads. I tried Facebook ads. I tried some Amazon stuff. I have tried bits and pieces of things, but I found that I was not getting a return. And same with when I run promos. Like, I paid for a few mail outs to go out to different mailing lists when I did my last promo, and I got a tiny little spike. So maybe like 50 people bought, or 100 people bought from each of these different ads that I had paid for. Then I send out to my newsletter list, and 300 people bought from my newsletter list, which I paid $0 for. So, you know, I had to take a look at like what makes sense at this point in terms of.
I'll be back, guys. Sorry.
Sure, no worries. So yeah, I think what makes sense is building your own list, getting your reviews up, and making sure that your listings are like solid, completely solid, that all your formats are connected, that you've got your good stars, that you've got everything in place before you start doing the ads. Because otherwise there's a solid risk of wasting your money. Now that being said, if one of your ad options that you want to choose is on Kobo, if they're going to do a direct mail out to all their readers and they're going to include you in like as the featured book in the newsletter that they're doing, that's very different than like an ad on Amazon. So, you know, if you're looking at where to spend your money, it seems like trying out a $5 slot like that is a better way to go than paying $50 or $100 or whatever. Now, Bookbub being the only exception, because as long as Bookbub says yes to you, it seems like that's a case where you're going to spend $500 or whatever dollars, but it's going to come back to you in spades and may help you hit one of those bestseller slots as well, just because of sheer volume and exposure that they have. Yeah. So does that sort of answer a question, Chris, or give you some?
Yeah. I mean, I'm
crunch?
Yeah, no, it's interesting because I'm researching it quite a lot at the moment. So your counter argument is very interesting because, you know, I've signed up for Dave Chesson's YouTube. I think he's really good actually. And
he's good.
I've also bought KDP Rocket, which I think is great.
Yeah.
And here's a word to the wise. He claims he doesn't like subscription models, but the rumor is he's going to go to a subscription model. So if you want to buy it now for $97. It's so I thought I'd do that. Yeah, I mean it is, you know, it's I think it's terrific. And then his AMS course is free.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting. I mean, I completely get what you say if you're just launching. And I mean, I've signed up for various promo things.
Mm-hmm.
Written Word Media is doing promo. I'm going to be signing up for Fussy Librarian, Choosy Bookworm, e-Reader News, and run promos on those for my launch.
Yeah.
Probably will play with AMS ads. I might not play with Facebook ads. I'll see.
Yeah. And I think there's launch advertising versus ongoing advertising, and again, those are two different things. Like if you're doing a very concentrated, like my goal is to get this in front of as many faces as possible for launch week or whatever, then that's very different than just running ongoing ads to try to increase sales, right? Like that's a finite period of time where you're going for market saturation. That is very different, but I would say track carefully, if you can, what you're seeing as a return on investment. Mm-hmm. Because you need to get very clear. So like, what are your goals with this advertising? You know, for some people, they want to hit a USA Today bestseller list, which is done on a weekly basis. And in that case, make sure you know which days of the week that tracking starts on, and don't start your ads until that day of the week, because it's really easy to split your numbers in a way that makes that not effective, right? So like there's some things like that just, if you know your goal is trying to get to whatever number in the Amazon Kindle store on launch week, well, okay, that's a different goal, right? Than just, I want to go from selling $1,000 a month to $2,000 a month. So I'm going to get ongoing ad slots.
Right. Yeah.
And, you know, if you've done your research, if you've checked out, there's a list on Kindlepreneur that's like the top ROI spots to pay for advertising for books, right?
Oh, is that right? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that's a good one to take a look at. Those are just the ones that have been kind of analyzed and shown to be the most effective. So,
sorry, can you explain that again? What do you mean by that?
Here, and I have that. I'll pull it up and show you here.
Right.
1 second. Okay. So share screen. Okay. So And I use Asana to track all this stuff. And then I have a reference section, which has all the things that I've found helpful. Like, so there's sales rank calculators, there's Kindle description generators, there's the free ads course stuff, book promo strategy. So there's a Kindlepreneur, the podcast that they did with TCK Publishing, which was really interesting. That one is a good place to start. And I took notes on what they said were their favorite ones. So
could you, you're going to copy all that? That's great.
Yeah, I'm just going to paste it into the chat.
Great.
Apparently I can't paste in the chat until we come back. Maybe I can. Here we go.
Also list on Dave Chesson's website.
Yep, that's the next thing I'll show you.
Oh, is it? Okay, great.
Okay, so that's the list of the favorites from that podcast. And then best promo site chart. And this one is the best book promo sites. And when it's one of the things that you can get for free from the Kindlepreneur site.
Oh, right. Okay.
Right. And so it's got like, this is the list of what he considers all the best ones. And it tells you whether it's free or not, the price range, what their subscriber list is in terms of size,
right.
Their Alexa ranking, their traffic, like all that stuff.
Right.
So that's really helpful. I can't just give you that because it's his stuff, but if you go to the Kindlepreneur site and you look for best book promo sites, you'll pull up that attachment.
Okay, good.
Yeah. And then, yeah, I think that's it for the better resources that I found. But the biggest thing I found is just listening to podcasts of what's working for other authors and writing down the stuff that they let drop in conversation.
Right.
Like, it's not that they, make a discrete list of what they think is the best, but when they're talking about how they went from here to here, they're often saying, oh yeah, and then I did this, and somebody will say, well, how? What did you do that with? And they'll say the name of something I don't recognize. I'll write it down, I'll go find it, and I'll research it and find out what it was and see how it could also work. So, I think being a bit of a detective is great, and then just sharing sort of within our group as well, like what's working for people, what's not. One thing you need to be aware of for AMS ads, they have some really specific rules about what you can and can't have on your covers. Like if there's blood, if there's anything that could be considered drug paraphernalia. So even a syringe, if you have a medical thriller, is a no-go.
Interesting.
There are some quite strict rules about what can't be on covers in AMS ads. So I would recommend that you actually look up their guidelines and just make sure before you build a whole strategy around that, that you know for sure that your book and your cover will be allowed in the program, because they screen everything. So just be aware of that. We've had a couple authors be quite surprised because they don't have they're not graphic covers or anything, but there was on one of them, there is kind of a syringe in the background. And he's like, I had no idea. I couldn't participate in any of this advertising. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Right.
And it might not be that relevant for you guys, but definitely for some of the others, I know write more in that sort of twisty genres with splattering potential, like weapons and stuff too. There's limits on that. So, just being aware of where their rules are. They can change those at any time as well. That's part of it. They can just randomly refuse anything at any time. But just so that that could be a thing. Let's see here. Yeah, okay. So the Facebook ads is a whole nother conversation, and I think we should maybe table that for the moment. And I will check out, because I know Mark Dawson has just redone a whole bunch of the 101 course because they re-released it. And so I'm going to go in and go through it again and just see what they've changed. Part of that is a special section they've just added on Facebook Live and how to use that as an author. So I'm going to work through that in the next week or two, and then hopefully I will have some intel for you guys on what the cool kids are doing.
Good. Yeah, I want to do Facebook Live for sure. So.
Yep. And I don't know if you follow Jonas, like the guy you were talking about the other day, Chris. But he uses Bookbub and he uses Facebook Live. Those are the primary ways he keeps in touch with his audience. So,
Right.
you know, I think he's got 8,000 followers on Bookbub, but he uses Bookbub instead of a newsletter list, which is a really interesting way to do that.
Oh, yeah, that is it.
And then the Facebook Live, I think he said weekly. He does like Q&As and he's chatting with readers. So you might want to just follow him on Facebook and go and just check it out.
I think I do already. Yeah.
Yeah. So just go check it out, because I think, you know, if you're looking at that as an option, then it seems to be working really well for him. So you might kind of check out.
I'll talk to him about it. He's already been quite helpful, and his wife's a huge fan of mine apparently, so that helps.
Nice.
Wants to keep domestic harmony. So no, he's been really good. So he's already talking about chasing the wind. So I think he's going to be helping me with that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That is great.
Oh.
Okay, so your last question was
a big one. It's about websites, which I know we can't get into immense detail. I'll tell you why I'm interested. I had a sobering encounter with a digital geek last week who pitched me how he would take over my life and make me a multi-million seller by completely revamping my brand, by getting rid of my shitty website, his words, probably not mine, by targeting me properly. He said that he'd researched me, and the three main words that came up for CC Humphreys were bound, gagged, and funny man. I don't know how that would have happened, but anyway, so it was all quite sobering. But I know. I mean, there's hardly any bondage in my book, so prisoners get put in handcuffs. But so it was interesting. But I mean, he was offering me this sort of whole deal, which I simply can't afford. I mean, he was offering to take over my life for $10,000 or something, and I said, yeah, that's. But he did talk about, you know, my website, and I'm very aware that my website is so, you know, I made it 10 years ago or something. And I'm looking at the ones you've shared, you know, the examples you've shared with the Academy, and also Bookbub did a very interesting comparison of different websites, and you know, the one when we were talking about it, and you'd done one for, is it Alan Stratton?
Yeah.
How so with Divi you were talking about, I know how clean that was. So, you know, I'm just wondering, and I think I asked that question in the email, because I did a bit of research into, well, initially free themes on WordPress that are meant to be good for authors. And there's one bizarrely called Author. And you can, but there's also I think an upgraded version of it for $95 or something. So I'm curious what you'd think about that. I mean, I'm planning on going in and redoing my website, but he said his caustic words were, you know, you wouldn't these days anyway, try to fix, you know, change your spark plugs yourself or fix your car if it broke down. You'd get you know, a mechanic to do it. And he says you've got to do the same thing with a website. You've got to have a fully professional, optimizable, you know, all those things. So I'm interested in your opinion. Could I do this myself or should I not?
Okay, so there's a few things that work. This is clearly his business model, so that's a thing. As an author who did exactly that at the beginning, when we first had our publishing company, Gumboot Books, that we started, we got an estimate from people because everybody said, oh, you got to have a website, you can't do it yourself, blah, blah, blah. And the estimate came back at $10,000, and that was 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I was like, well, we have like, we have no money. Like, any money we have is going to making the actual books. So this is obviously not on the table. And this is a zero return on investment item. Like, you, as opposed to, you know, what I see as like, for an author, the amount of people coming to your website as the place of contact is actually quite low. Most people are not going to come to your website. Most people are going to be finding you through Amazon or seeing an ad somewhere or reading a review on something from somewhere else and coming there. It is not as high leverage as, say, an online sales company. Right. So yes, I think your website is important. Yes, I think having a website is important. It's great if it's very effective. No, I don't think you need to necessarily spend $10,000 in order to sell some books. Because if you look at it as how many books do you have to sell to recoup that $10,000, probably about 20,000, right? Like, you know, and so how much did it really help you? And yes, there's a quality issue in terms of like, I think you can be more or less effective with what you have to work with. Do I think that you have to hire somebody to do it all for you? No, you're a pretty go-to guy. You've got some solid examples to work with. What personally my approach is that you should get it as good as you can get it on your own first, unless you're totally tech averse or, you know, you don't want to have anything to do with it. I mean, if what you want is branding, pay somebody to design you a logo. Like, you don't need, you know, like you don't need them to do everything for you. If you can find a site that you love, you're welcome to copy anything I have built ever, and use it as a framework, and just know that, okay, well, on the front page, we're trying to get this nice bold statement of sign up here to get on the download list for this free book or whatever. Like, even what Jeremy did with a revamp on his site with very minimal pointers, right? Yeah. We brought it up during a workshop. We worked through it page by page, and I'm happy to do that for you at one of the office hours if you'd like to offer up your site for a session. I think it's really helpful for people watching it who are looking at building their own as well. So if you want to do that, we'll do the same thing with yours. But I think until we've done that and you decide whether or not the suggestions we've made are within your capacity to learn, build, try. Yeah. I think using a framework that a graphic designer has designed, like purchasing a theme, even at $100 that's going to do what you want it to do, is a fabulous starting place. And then you only customize the small pieces that need customizing to give it your flair and style. Right. And then that way you've hired a graphic designer effectively to do that for you, even though you haven't paid them, you know, hourly. You've bought their template, right, and you've got the benefit of their experience and their wisdom in there already. And then you just don't muck that up. Like, that's the basic rule, is keep it simple, change only what you need to give it your own style. So I think if you work through the branding courses that I, cross my heart, I'm posting over the next week to 10 days, right, and you apply those to your website, there is enough information in those courses to give you what you need to do a good job of that site. And then if you need help to make one thing work that you're not sure about or whatever, then, you know, me and several other people in this little community can do an hourly fix for you on something that's slightly out of your comfort zone. But for the most part, as an author site, you should be able to do everything you need to do with a basic but professional WordPress template and some basic design notes and sort of advice. So
okay, well, that's what I'll do. I'll wait with bated breath for your branding thing. I'll watch that, and that'd be grand, Crystal. Yeah. And
websites are not permanent, so it's one of those things where I tell people, like, you want to build for who you're going to be. Like, you want to make sure that your website is representing the author you would like to be in the world. And so that is important, to make sure that it looks professional enough to reflect the career you're having and or want to have. But it is not a requirement that be a massive investment. And you know what? If everything takes off and you're making $100,000 a year in royalties, then decide to pay that $10,000 to next level it as part of your advertising plus rebranding plus whatever. It reflects that change in status or elevation or, you know, career advancement to the public in a different way as well. So I think, start with what is manageable, save your pennies for your highest ROI. Like, you know, you could spend that $10,000 on ads if you wanted to spend it on something. At least there's a shot at getting money back.
Right, sure, absolutely. No, that's great advice. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. Okay. Good.
And like, don't show that dude this video.
No, I will not. I will not. No, I don't think we're in contact anymore. No.
Yeah, it's a little bit desperate, actually.
Well, and you know, it's like any industry. When you get far enough in and you become a professional, it's easy to say that there's only one right way to do this. And in fairness, like, you know, if I'm an internet security expert, then my view of the world is that all of these things are not safe and the world is a threatening place and you have to do these 57 things to even like go online and check your email. But there are levels of effectiveness, and, you know, there is good enough. And that I think is an important thing to learn. Yeah. because it's very easy to get sucked in by the expert at every aspect of this indie publishing journey and this author platform building journey. And it's really easy to pay $5,000 to a publicist and see no results, or, whatever. And so I always advocate people learn enough about the process themselves to know if they're making smart choices in spending that money, and that they're able to then understand which parts are complicated. And yes, this is worth it to me to spend this extra, but this I could have just done myself, Right. And I think you're a much better project manager once you understand the steps that are involved and you understand the knowledge required, and you can then make a decision and not just get taken for a ride by somebody who knows you don't know anything about it. And so then kind of just sets what they want and runs with it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And preys on your insecurity and your weakness.
Yeah, that's kind of my biggest pet peeve, is we often get clients coming to us after they've paid out a fortune to somebody to do something for them. And they're like, can you fix this? And except I've used up every penny that I have. And so that's not a nice place to be in. I'd much rather kind of help people get set up properly. And then figure out where you can tweak those things. And the other piece too is often stuff evolves as you're going through the process, and where you thought your audience might not be. And if you've built everything around what you thought was going to be your reality before you test it, you may have created something that does not work with where you want to go. And so, that's the other piece is, the book you think is going to be the one to take off might not be that one. And, your audience might shift as your interests change. And so, there's a certain amount of keeping things flexible and nimble and not being dependent on somebody else to do those updates for you, or, not being held hostage to the structure of your thing that you didn't build. If you built it, you know how to change it. And
exactly. So, I need to control it for sure. Yeah.
I think that's really important. Lots of times people just ghost. They web design and things like that is a pretty mobile business. So very often we get people turning up who are like, yeah, so I used to have this person who did all of this. I don't know how they did any of it, but they're gone. And now I can't use this, and I don't know how to access anything. And so,
or even take it down.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, for you, I'd say, we'll set up in one of the next 2 weeks as office hours. We'll set up a breakdown of your site. We'll just go page by page by page. And I'll let people know we're doing that, because I think there's a few people who are interested in setting up author sites right now. So we'll just see who wants to show up for that. And then you can work through the design stuff, and we'll see how you do. If you need help, then let us know.
Cool.
All right.
Great.
Bonnie, did you have any follow-up questions on anything?
Well, related to that, because Chris kind of mentioned, now I just forgot the word for it, templates. Do you have recommended templates or WordPress templates that you start with, or do you?
There are themes that I really like. There's lots and lots and lots of good ones. It's mostly about matching. It's about knowing, okay, this is what I want my pages to do. So I would actually recommend, Chris, that before you commit to any particular theme, that we do that evaluation. Because then you know exactly what each page features needs to look like. And a lot of the themes have different page templates. So your theme is like your whole packet, and then the page templates are specific things that are different. So they might already have a portfolio page and a landing page and a about page and a contact page already built into the template. So then all you need to do is make sure that the functionality of those is going to match with what you want. And so when I'm doing web stuff, I usually start off with, I actually use a notebook and I sketch the pages, and I do I want a picture here, and I want a description here, and I want to get this now button underneath it. And then I go looking at themes and templates, and I decide how close is this to what I'm trying to do? Because the closer it is, the less customization required and the less you're going to muck with it. So I have a couple of kind of go-to theme companies, and I use different themes from them depending on what I want. And then it depends a little bit too on if you're on the publicly hosted WordPress versus privately hosted WordPress. And, I think for you, Chris, we've determined we could bounce you back and forth. You have an option to move because you've got both sets of hosting going on. So it might be worth, paying for an hour of tech time to move it from one to the other. And then just installing whatever template you wanted to purchase. So
Right.
we can talk about specific companies and recommendations as far as themes go. At the same time, I think we can do your like evaluation part first, and then we'll talk about what might be a good fit for that specifically.
Great.
Yeah.
Good.
All right.
All right.
Excellent. I guess we're over time, so I should probably hit stop now and go do the rest of the day.
Right. Well, great. Well, thank you so much, Crystal.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks, Crystal.
And next one is 5 o'clock next Wednesday. So
I don't think I'll be around for that because I'm in Vancouver rehearsing for the play.
Okay.
So, but I'll try.
okay, and we definitely will not schedule next week as your website breakdown.
No.
Why don't
Actually,
we go with-
not the next 2 weeks, I don't think. But
Okay.
maybe in 3 weeks would be great.
Okay, so I'm actually going to just put a note of that in my calendar. So that would be the 16th of May at 5 p.m.
Oh, let's see here. Oh, yeah, that's the day before Creative Inc. Yeah, that'll be fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm putting a note in here. It says, Chris, website eval.
And I'll hopefully have seen all your branding stuff by then, right?
Yes. Well, it'll be
You
up
did.
there. I don't know if you'll have watched it, but
I'm going to try.
yes, it should all be there. So you should be good. All right. Thanks, everybody. And don't forget to copy the stuff out of the chat on the side. I will do that also right now and drop it into the spot with the video when I post it, just so that we have those notes. Okay. Awesome. Thanks, guys. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.